Enforcement with a state senator who has new legislation on the issue. Stay with us. I'll be right back. The Trump administration's intensified immigration enforcement efforts began here in California last year. State lawmakers are introducing new legislation designed to stop agents from targeting people at courthouses. The state lawmaker who introduced that legislation, State Senator Susan Rubio, a Democrat who represents District 22, which includes Baldwin Park and surrounding San Gabriel Valley communities, joins me right here in studio. Senator Rubio, welcome to Inside the Issue. It's great to have you in.
Well, thank you for having me here.
This is an interesting conversation, the Keep Courts Safe from ICE Act. You've presented this legislation. Just talk about, in your estimation, the need for it.
Well, it's critically important because as we see these horrific scenes, not only in California, but around our nation, where we see families being torn apart in the steps of the courthouses, I had to do something about that. You know, we see our children being traumatized. We see a little boy hanging onto the leg of his mom or dad. And so what I wanted to do is create policy that will keep families safe and together. So simply put, this bill is going to allow any family that wants to show up to court remotely to do so. This will only happen in California courts.
Only in California courts, and as you've also written into the bill, only until January of 2029. I understand that date, but make it clear for the folks at home why only until January 2029.
Well, you know, it does have a sunset. We wanted to make sure that we try it while we have our current president to ensure that at least while he's in office, families feel safe enough to come forward.
And what happens then if a Republican wins the next presidential election? Because as you say, it does seem like it's time to this president leaving office. Same policies may continue.
Well, let's just say this particular president is particular. I don't anticipate that someone else would allow such inhumane treatment of families. But I wanted to share with you, I know that most may think of this bill as an immigration issue, but I am a victim's advocate, and I've been working with victims for a long time, and so this is not a new concept. I allowed this to occur in 21 for victims of domestic violence that had a hard time facing their abusers. I'm a survivor, and last year I took advantage of it. But I want people to think about this. If there is a crime that's happening to your loved one, whether it's a rape or an assault, you want that person to come forward. And right now, people are not feeling safe enough that they can come and say something about it. So we are allowing not only for people to show up remotely, but also testify remotely. So for those that are fearful to come forward, we encourage them to do so.
Well, your inspiration for the strength with which you moved on from your history of victimization on the back of some of these issues. AB 668 is the bill that you're talking about. And one of the things that people have pointed to is on the back of that time, since 2021, since AB 668, your legislation came to bear, there has been an understanding in the court system of how to deal with this sort of remote testimony, but there's also a conversation about what if there's immigration enforcement towards those who are truly in need of being apprehended by immigration enforcement. In other words, the actual criminals, the worst of the worst, as the Trump administration had promised apprehending, and that the courts then somehow become a sanctuary zone for this. How do you respond to those kinds of conversations?
Well, the reality is that there is discretion in this bill, and that's what we're working towards. We don't have all the language written yet because we are working with stakeholders. We wanted to hear from the courts and those impacted, so there will be discretion, number one. But number two, the law is the law. If someone's committing a crime or is guilty of anything, it will continue to work the way it's always worked. This is just about making sure that everyone has access. And I have to share with you, even U.S. citizens are afraid to come forward, and we're talking about any case. They have landlords disputes or any tickets. They're not showing up, and what we want is safe communities, and safe communities only happen if people come forward.
You've seen some of the legal challenges from the Trump administration about this sort of legislation. We've seen the No Secret Police Act, the No Vigilantes Act, and the courts have essentially held those up, but not necessarily on supremacy clause grounds. Have you contemplated those legal challenges? Have you thought about the ways in which this may or may not pass constitutional muster?
Well, we started doing this when the pandemic happened. So again, it's not a new concept. We already did it during the pandemic because, as you remember, we couldn't go to court. Courts had to adjust during the time.
But Senator, this is about federal immigration enforcement. And so state law then legislating against federal immigration, you get that supremacy clause issue.
True, but I want to clarify. What this is going to do is going to to only allow the courts in California. This is not federal courts.
Right.
This will only happen in the courts in California because we want to make sure that any case that any immigrant has can show up. Right now, they're not showing up at all, which is causing a lot of problems when they're not showing up for tickets. They're getting evicted without due process. So this is for California courts only.
No, it makes good sense, and it'll be interesting to see the way it proceeds through the legislature. Before I let you go, as you know, in your party, it's a huge conversation, as we've been talking about tonight, about who is going to be the next governor of California. And Democrats are hoping it's going to be a Democrat, usually a foregone conclusion, a chance now, a 27% chance at latest estimate, that it could be two Republicans in the general election in November. How are you thinking about this? Are you thinking about who it should be? Have you endorsed anybody? What do you tell those lower polling Democrats in the race?
Well, first of all, I haven't endorsed because we know that the nomination period closes this coming week. And so I anticipate a few may drop out, but it is the hardest thing for a candidate to consider that after they've been working so hard. And I know many of them personally, so it's really difficult to make a comment on this issue. But I haven't endorsed, but I do want to encourage everyone, regardless of party affiliation, you have to come out and vote. It's one of those basic rights that we should exercise. But I hope our friends do the right thing, and I'm not saying who, but if they're viable, they should stay in the race.
And you think it's worthwhile for them all to potentially stay their conscience and almost possibly 27% chance of having two Republicans in November?
Well, I think that our friends will analyze their own campaigns and make that determination themselves. I think they'll do the right thing if they need to.
Yeah, the hardest thing about politics is telling someone to give up their own ambition for the greater good, and we'll have to see how that all plays out. Senator Rubio, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have you on Inside the Issues.
Thank you so
Looking forward
much for
to more of
having
these
me
conversations
today.
with you. Great to have you here. State Senator Susan Rubio talking a bit about proposed legislation and, of course, the biggest conversation in Democratic politics, especially here in California, about the governor's race. More coming up. Stay with us.